The Bikeriders is a 2024 film directed by Jeff Nichols, starring Tom Hardy, Austin Butler, and Jodie Comer. Based on the book of the same name, written by Dan Linen. The film tells the story of the club's founding, the glory years, and the tragic murder that brought an end to the golden years of motorcycling. The film's structured as a series of interviews taken over preceding decades, cataloging the life and times of the Vandals Motorcycle Club. Alright, now I went to go see this movie with my girlfriend a couple of weeks ago in an actual movie theater, and when we walked in, we were the only two people in the theater. I mean, absolutely empty. We had it all to ourselves. Normally I don't really give a fuck about movies, but when I saw the trailer for this movie, something about it just called me. It just looked special. I knew this was one that I had to experience in a theater. Now, as I said, the movie is framed through a series of interviews done by Dan Lyman with the members of the Vandals, as well as with the old lady of one of the main members focused on in the story. Jodie Comer's character basically acts as the audience surrogate, being introduced to this club as we are. In the beginning of the movie, she's an outsider to the entire thing. One of her girlfriends invites her to a club party, and the next thing she knows, she's surrounded by greasy, dirty bikers. And the interview format that they chose to use for this movie really gives you an insight into the thought process of the character. Like, while she's getting freaked out, she's telling you she's getting freaked out. And while some people may call that tell instead of show, I personally think that it was a very effective use of voiceover, not only to convey the story, but it was also a nice touch, considering that the original book was literally just a bunch of interviews and pictures of the outlaws. I don't know how much of it was real dialogue taken from the interviews and how much of it was scripted, but it all came across as very authentic in a way that you don't get with a lot of other movies, because the format of most movies simply doesn't allow for that level of understanding between the audience and the characters. And speaking of characters, the performances in this movie are absolutely top-notch. Like, I mean, Oscar level. Everybody in the cast absolutely knocked it out of the fucking park. And I'll be honest, when you first hear Tom Hardy's accent, it takes a little bit of getting used to. I've noticed that with a lot of his movies. The first time you hear him doing the accent, it takes you a few seconds to acclimatize to it. But once you've been watching the movie for about 5 minutes, you completely fucking forget that he's doing an accent. Same with Jodie Comer. I'm pretty sure she's British, but like, you really cannot tell. She really does nail that Midwestern American accent. And Austin Butler, I've never seen one of his movies before, but that guy, holy crap, he acted his fucking ass off in this. He is genuinely one of the best parts of this movie. Him, Tom Hardy, and Jodie Comer, honestly, they completely carry this fucking film. Everybody did an amazing job in this movie, but those three absolutely carried this film from beginning to end. And it's not just good because it's entertaining. You know, it's not good in the same way that a Marvel movie's good. It's good in the way that The Goodfellas or The Godfather is good. Their performances make you feel like you know the characters. Like, these are people you grew up with, and you're watching the trials and tribulations of people that you honest to God care about. And I've seen a couple of reviews where people said that the movie was boring or slow, and quite frankly, I think those people have had their attention spans destroyed by the internet. You know, like, they went to the movies looking for Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man, and they ended up watching Road to Paloma. Like, there are funny characters, and fun things do happen in the movie, but at the end of the day, it's less about entertaining you than it is about telling a story. It's about faithfully adapting the lives of these people. So, you know, I know taste is a subjective thing, but I honestly think that anyone who watched this movie and thought it was boring is kind of coming to it with the wrong kind of attitude in order to truly appreciate it. Like, I'm not trying to be a fucking nerd, like, actually, you have to have a very high IQ to understand the Bikeriders, but I really feel like this is the kind of movie that they don't make anymore. You know, movies have become very hollow and disposable over the years, and it's been a long time since a movie has actually made me feel for the characters the way the Bikeriders has. There's a scene where Austin Butler's character is getting beaten up outside of a bar. And I'm not going to explain the whole scene, but essentially he ends up getting his leg injured in the fight. And the only thing that he's really worried about is that they're going to chop off his leg. And he's not worried about losing the leg out of pain or fear. He's genuinely terrified that he's never going to get to ride his Harley again. Now, while that may show an extreme lack of judgment or priorities, it's also extremely relatable to anyone who's ever fallen off of a motorcycle. Same with Tom Hardy's character getting inspired to start his club by watching The Wild One, or that scene where Austin Butler and Jodie Comer are riding on the motorcycle together for the first time. They're cresting over that hill and the music's playing. There's just certain things that if you've ridden a motorcycle, you're going to relate to. It's going to speak to something that you've experienced in your life. And all the side characters, like Funny Sonny and Cockroach, with all of their funny little eccentricities, it really makes you feel like you're getting to know these people. And that makes it even more tragic at the end as the film goes on and the club starts to deteriorate. Watching what happens to them, it's so much more tragic because you care about them. Like the scene where Cockroach is hanging out with the new members and he tells them that he wants to quit the club to become a police cop. As soon as he said that, I knew it was going to be trouble. And honestly, I was on the edge of my seat that entire scene where they're breaking into Cockroach's house and you don't know what's going to happen. I was actually tense. I'm never tense during movies, but I actually was on the edge of my seat wondering and worrying about what the fuck was going to happen to Cockroach because I cared so much about him. To me, that is a good fucking movie. I genuinely think this movie is an instant classic. One of those movies like The Thing or They Live, where no one really appreciated the brilliance of what was trying to do at the time. I really think that in a couple of years, The Bikeriders is going to be hailed as a cinematic classic on par with The Goodfellas. And I don't think it's going to win a lot of awards. It's probably going to get fucking ignored, but it deserves awards. If the empty theater I watched this in was any indication, this movie's probably going to get snubbed. But I genuinely believe that the quality of the film is such that in a few years, people are going to appreciate it. The same way that people didn't really appreciate Fight Club or Drive when they came out. Tom Hardy probably won't win an Oscar. He might not even get nominated, but he fucking deserves an Oscar for this performance. The scene right before he's about... I'll just spoil it. The scene right before he's about to die, and he's talking to Jodie's character, and you can just see all of this pain in his eyes. You can see so much that he wants to say, but he can't. But yet it still comes through in the performance. It's not what he's saying, it's the silences in between. It's not only a captivating performance, but it makes the death so much more sudden and tragic. And another thing, this movie is going to make you absolutely fucking hate Taco Bowman. Obviously in real life, they never solved Johnny's murder. They never, put anybody in jail for that crime. But this movie and the narrative it paints makes you fucking hate Taco Bowman. And obviously, no offense, I know he's dead, I don't mean to speak ill, but holy shit. But to the filmmaker's credit, even his character has enough development that you feel for him. You understand why he is the person that he is and why he makes the decisions that he does. You see his troubled family life and you see the insecurity he has towards not being one of the Vandals, not being accepted by these guys that he's idolized his entire life. And then when he finally gets in, he fucking shoots the guy who inspired him in the first place. It's the kind of dramatic irony that is truly, truly heartbreaking. And all the more heartbreaking because you know that it's based on true events. And at the end, when Tom Hardy's character is dead and Austin Butler is just sitting on that stoop and he starts crying, the well of emotions hits you right in the gut. I honestly forgot for a second that Tom Hardy wasn't really fucking dead. And that last scene with Jodie Comer where she's talking to Danny Lyman and she's talking about how Austin Butler's character gave up riding motorcycles. And Danny asks her if he misses it anymore. And she says, no, I don't think so. And then you see Austin Butler sitting there with his beer, looking off into that middle distance as that engine starts roaring in the background. And then it goes back and cuts to a montage of all the characters throughout the movie. And it's just a fucking gut punch. You know, you've come so far with these characters and you've grown so attached to them in such a short amount of time. It was all just really, really well done. There's one line that Tom Hardy says right before his death scene that honestly might be one of my favorite pieces of movie dialogue I've ever heard. He said, "You can give everything you have to something, but in the end it's just going to do what it was always going to do." And it's such well-written dialogue, not just because it's a good line, but because of how deeply true of a statement that is. There's a scene in the beginning of the movie when Jodie Comer's character, she's really freaked out because she's just coming to the clubhouse for the first time. She's surrounded by these dirty, stinky guys. She has no idea what the fuck's going on. And Tom Hardy sits next to her and he says, "Don't worry, I'm not going to let any of these guys hurt you. I'm not going to let anything bad happen to you." And then later in the movie, as the Vietnam War is kicking in and more messed up guys are coming back and more of the wrong kind of people are coming into the club, there's a scene where she almost gets sexually assaulted, and when Tom Hardy saves her, you can see this look in his eyes of, "Oh fuck, I promised you that I was going to keep you safe, and I let you the fuck down." And there's so many little moments like that in the movie, where what they do with the silence in between the dialogue is just as important and profound, if not more, than the dialogue itself. I genuinely hope that any surviving members of the Outlaws MC who were alive in those days, or any of their families who were alive to see this movie, consider it a fitting tribute. Because I thought it was a fucking masterpiece. I mean, the set design, the costuming, even the fucking makeup and hair was fucking amazing and on point. And, like, obviously, I wasn't alive in the 1960s, but I've been looking at the pictures that this movie was based on the internet since I was a little fucking kid. And to finally understand the stories of all these people that I've only ever seen glimpses of was truly something special. I read that this was a passion project for Jeff Nichols, and you can really fucking tell. And like I said, in a few years, I really think this movie is going to be appreciated as a cinematic classic. Anyway, thanks for watching. Go watch the Bikeriders, and don't eat any fucking cockroaches.